Hello and welcome to Gifted Underachievers, a podcast for mid-level creatives with delusional ambitions. In this segment, we have another chat, a little bit of a case study about something important to creatives and to those who run creative adjacent businesses, which is how to diversify your audience or your market if there's something going on in the world that will potentially disrupt your income. Hope you enjoy.
Hey, Pat.
Yes, James.
So I was thinking back to our attempt to dilute the MAGA brand
Yeah.
with our own MAGA. And,
Right.
For listeners who are unfamiliar with our, lone political movement, the MILF Alliance for Gonad Awareness,
MAGA.
MAGA. And we've got a little emblem with its own little hat. We're putting it out there, doing our best.
Yeah.
But we had this conversation earlier, and you're making some changes in your creative adjacent business.
Yes, I am.
And
yeah.
and in part, I'm fucking up the segue. I will be the one to admit that.
I didn't know we'd had a segue. Go on.
I know. We're really underachieving on this segment, aren't we? Right out of the gate. Sometimes we do better than others, but
right.
But no, you were doing this, and the way that I've been kind of thinking about it is like a geographic and cultural boundaries. And you're really thinking about what it means to be a Canadian creative, I think.
Well,
is that correct, or am I off base?
No, you're not. I wouldn't say you're off base. It's not so much about the meaning as it is about where do I want to spend my energy for the next, couple of years, and it is not in growing a U.S. A client base or whatever. Most of my clients are American. They're often in different countries, but I don't really work with very many Canadian writers. Just kind of happened that way. So I've been in this business for maybe 16 years now, ish. And what I realized, what triggered this was just general disillusionment with the United States of America. I just thought this is not a good country to be operating in. I'm a remote worker, so I pay taxes in Canada. I live in Canada. But the fact that I'm receiving manuscripts and teaching online for mostly American audience. Sometimes the teaching I have half European, half American, which is great. I think it's a good education particularly for Americans to see that there are other countries in the world.
yeah, different perspectives.
Yeah, my
even
attitude
amongst English speakers.
Well, I don't like having a bad attitude about the audience for my work as a developmental editor. It's not that I dislike individual people. It's just that I feel that it's an unsafe environment for them, for creative people generally, that it could dry up. So there's a financial reason. There's generally, among the creatives I work with, some are fine, they're trucking along, and others are basically unable to keep writing because of the issues that they're dealing with in their day-to-day life with the fascism and so on. They're just sheer exhaustion, right? And so there's a little of that going on. There's also the fact that I kind of remembered that I have options, lots of options, and that it would make more sense for me to turn my attention to the UK, Australia, New Zealand markets, as well as the Canadian market for the type of work I do, because they're just more stable. The economies are more stable. The social situation is far more stable. They have their basic needs basically taken care of in most of those countries. They have universal health care, all that stuff. So they don't have the preoccupations that particularly mid-level, lower economic strata American writers are dealing with right now. So there's that. And then the other thing is I wanted to capitalize on the fact that I have sort of cross-border skill sets. So editors use style guides, at certain levels of editing, and I do more than one level of editing. So, but I know the UK and the Canadian style guides. I know how to use them. I don't have them memorized. I don't even have the the Chicago one
Mhm.
memorized. Nobody does, as far as I
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
However, I just thought I'm in a unique position to work with writers from all over the place, and because I have such a my MFA is from a U.S. university, I have an affinity for the country aside from its current
Mhm.
state of decline, and so I could be a bridge for people from writers from Commonwealth countries if they want to have a U.S. audience. I know how that publishing market works to a degree and can help steer their concept, premise, that kind of
Mhm.
stuff with the dev editing, developmental editing. So I have all these reasons where personal and professional, where I am taking steps. I have like a 9-month plan to
Yeah.
diversify. Basically, I'm trying to diversify into other economies
Mhm.
so that I am not dealing with the country in decline necessarily as is 90% of my workload. And I am also not dealing with a very small market only if I just stuck to Canadian
Right.
writers because it's a
Right.
small market.
So one thing, for clarity is, so you're not saying that if somebody from the US approaches you and says, "Hey Pat, can you edit this? I want to hire you." You're not going to say no, you're from the US, right?
Oh,
So
of
it's
course
not
not. No, no,
it's
no. It's
this
always
is
about the
more
book.
about, really it's about recognizing that there's a problem,
Yeah.
right? And it's impacting, not just you as a Canadian. Talk of trying to make Canada the 51st state, the tariffs, the whole, sort of this whole verbal assault
Yeah.
and economic assault that's coming at you. But it's making you think about your future
Yeah.
and causing you to get to a place where you really need to diversify
Yeah.
in terms of geography.
Well, I have determined that I would like to diversify. I could spin along the way I'm doing it, and probably it would all be fine. But to me, it's more
Mhm.
interesting to follow my instinct and just say I somehow tapped into this giant market. It's been very good to me. I love the Americans I work with. I think they're great. I work with writers. I love writers.
Yeah.
So that's all great. And I work with a great school in Vermont who's teach I teach my intellectual property through them, and that the owner of the school is a fantastic person, and that's great. And I am no longer thinking that being active in that particular market is as the only market that I deal in, or the majority of my work is going to be personally fulfilling to me. I'm ready to see stories from other countries. I teach already people from other countries, and I think they're just it's not so much a difference in the people. It's just that I think for me it would be a really interesting project as well too. So I've taken certain steps already, and my plan has other steps, and we'll see what happens. But I think it's going to be fun.
Yeah, as somebody in the US who's had clients in Europe,
Mhm.
particularly the UK, but also Holland, Belgium, Germany, and
Yeah.
places like that. And this is just me. Like I can't point to a data point,
Mhm.
but I feel like there's less receptivity to wanting to work with somebody in the US. And I actually had a client in Europe who was very much like, look, you've got a mess that you're dealing with in your country, and I'm
Yeah.
not sure I really want to work with you.
Yeah.
That has happened. So on my flip side, and this is really a case study about what you're doing because I find it really fascinating, but it and what I want to learn from what you're doing is I have to diversify too, and I have to think about these geographic political boundaries and how different choices that are beyond my control affect what I do and how I can exert control over my fate and my future, right? And
Yeah.
that feels like that's exactly what you're doing.
It does. I mean, just on the very surface level, it makes sense to pull away or move some of your business to countries that are not as politically and economically unstable as the US.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
it's unstable, and so an unstable client base is not the client base that's going to pay your rent every month or your mortgage or whatever you got
right.
going on. put food in your cupboards. Well, the fact that I have, it took me, I probably thought about it for about a year before I even started generating a plan. And I kind of thought, it's fine, it'll blow over or whatever. The instability is down there, but I've come to understand that this is a long-term issue that's
Right.
even, even once the political situation changes, if it does, there will be a lot of problems in that country. And so do I need that to be, most of my business? No, I have options. I'm part of a Commonwealth of Nations. And so I really would love to actually join, and this is part of my strategies, I guess, joined Editors Canada, which I'd never been a member of before because
Hmm.
the fee's really high and I didn't see the benefits. However, there are benefits. I paid the fee, and then it allows me
Hmm.
to fast track my membership into the UK organization and the Australia New Zealand organizations. So
Oh,
there's,
nice.
yeah, and then they all have teaching opportunities. So I won't be sort of limited because the opportunities for teaching editing, I think, are not growing in the US. They're shrinking. AI has been a disruptive technology. There's a lot of
Hmm.
uncertainty. People are like, should I even be getting into this field? Other countries have
Right.
better laws around this stuff
True.
and just a different attitude towards it, I think. Not, I mean, that's a blanket statement, but it's a little more regulated. So the long-term goal is to move the courses that I'm teaching now, either duplicate them or just withdraw them and then move them,
Hmm.
depending on what happens with the school, um, to other editorial bodies that teach the stuff I teach, which is developmental
Hmm.
editing and line editing. And then it all ties in too with my business plan for, the next couple of years, which is to move down to fewer days a week. Because right now I work a lot, like I work a ton and I could
Hmm.
drop dead tomorrow, like I'm very, very excitable, very, no, I'm just kidding. I could have a massive jammer and fall on the floor,
Yeah,
heart
you
attack.
strike me as high stress. The amount of fried chicken, empty fried chicken boxes around you is alarming, to say
Cans
the
of
least.
gin all over the place. I'm
Yeah.
self-medicating. I'm not going to deny it. Anyway, yeah, so the idea is that more of my income will come from teaching as things go along. And there's just this huge market where I just feel like, oh, why wouldn't I try it? This
Yeah.
unstable situation that we are living on top of, basically, if you look at a map, it's like living over a meth lab, don't go buy your groceries down there.
Well, and this, I also find this interesting because, so both my parents were teachers. So I come from this background in teaching. And
Yeah.
one of the things that I thought, very, very much at the start of when I was doing this is that if I built up enough of a career and resume and experience and portfolio and all that kind of stuff, I could get into teaching. And
Oh,
for
yeah.
me, because of the way because of my parents, and it was a very structured image where it would have to be at an established like
Right.
college or university
Right.
and all that kind of stuff. And I have done a little bit of stuff around like high school and that kind of thing. And I
Mhm.
enjoyed it. It was very minor, so I don't want to overplay it. But
Yeah.
it feels to me like you're creating your own opportunity to teach.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you got to create your own. They don't come after you for it. Although this actually one of the courses I did get asked to develop it, but the opportunities need to be created. And also, I already have the material. Remember I was talking, was it last week or the week before, about those 14 projects that I did, and then I
Hmm.
just haven't continued to have them out there. Those are mostly courses, and so, or one-off webinars, and there's just so much. At a certain point in your career, you get to know a lot about different technical aspects of how you do your job,
Right.
and so, like, I could teach book mapping, which I learned
Right.
from a person named Heidi Fiedler, who had a great course on it, but she no longer offers the course. She's kind of like
Hmm.
moved on to other stuff. And I've added my own stuff to book mapping and I use it in different ways. And I teach it as part of this course I teach already. So it would be easy to pull that out and have it as a
Yeah.
webinar offered in other associations.
Right. So and so you're repurposing, past materials. You're taking the initiative to sort of say, here's an opportunity. This fits in with stuff that we have talked about, which are, alternative ways to earn money. You call them pension projects.
Yeah.
And but it's also about diversifying where you are getting clients for your editing work as well.
Yeah. It's spreading the risk. Because I really think the meth lab could blow up in a way that stops all the money. It's
Yeah,
quite
it happened
unlikely.
2007, 2008, right?
Yeah, well, true. I'm not worried about it, but it would just be dumb not to do something about it. I mean, this is kind of like being in a country in 1933 and going, maybe I shouldn't just have German clients.
Yeah. Maybe I should be doing something different. And then, the other question I had is you talk about the Commonwealth. And
Yeah.
so people in the US, they're going to be familiar with the term, but not really. How does that work? And what does that mean? And how does it reduce barriers or not reduce barriers and that kind of thing?
Well, there's this decolonization sort of happened, right? I
Mhm.
mean, Canada has its own constitution and so on. We don't call it that, but the um, the general idea, and this I could be wrong because I don't really fucking know either, but what I've discovered from living here, being Canadian, is that there are former colonies of the United Kingdom. It did this big giant let's steal everybody's land phase in the
Mhm.
1718 into the 1900s, and let's enslave their population, steal their land, and we'll call them British Commonwealth territories. And then everybody fought for their rights and got most of them back, but we're still fucking with the locals and
Yep.
First Nations people. However, because we were all part of one system, there are efficiencies and able like I can get into we have mutual agreements among associations and so on in the
Mhm.
Commonwealth countries that don't exist between Canada and the US, or maybe used to exist and are no longer part of it. So I can get a deal, not necessarily in registration fees or anything like that, but I can get
Mhm.
access to a higher level of membership and therefore be more eligible for teaching sooner. Basically, it's quite
Right.
limited in my purview. Also, because I have a knowledge of the different systems of spelling and grammar and punctuation, which are different, they're not very different, but different enough. I can work in any of those, and I can help, say, a UK writer who wants to pitch to the US market, change their book.
Right.
You know, I mean, if they get published traditionally, the publisher will do that. But you know,
Mhm.
there's a little bit of sort of. I haven't really formed my thinking around it, but there's enough in it to make me think, it could be interesting. And I
Mhm.
also teach process that isn't commonly known for how to developmentally edit books, and I think it's a process that really works. And so that's a new. There aren't that many courses out there that do it. In fact, none
Right.
really. Yeah,
So yeah, so it's interesting. I mean, you're creating you're seeing Australia, Canada, UK as its own market.
yeah,
And they have this historic connection, which is, reduced some barriers, not eliminated barriers,
yeah,
certainly. Um, but there's an opportunity there.
yeah. And because my parents immigrated to Canada, it goes through the father. I have, I can I did actually have European community citizenship, or not citizenship, sorry, completely wrong, passport. So I can travel
Mhm.
freely. Now I do have a UK passport. And so that's also, I think, probably helpful for if I wanted to fly there to go to, say, the London Podcast Fest and then attach it to teaching a course potentially if I
Mhm.
got my shit together and pitched enough. It's possible.
Mhm. Well, this is really, I like this because it's really talking about blurring boundaries, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And literal geographic boundaries
Yeah.
and really expanding what you do outward and diversifying your sources and pipelines and all those kinds of things. So, regardless of what's going on here in the US politically and socially and whatnot, it makes sense anyway,
It makes sense
right?
anyways, and I think now, why didn't I do this years ago? But then I think, well, I like the US dollar. It's worth more than the Canadian dollar and so on and so forth. So
Mhm.
part of it, the change is thinking about what currency I'm going to charge because I still don't really work with that many Canadian. It's just a very small market, you know.
Hmm.
So would I charge pounds or, Australian dollars? Well, it doesn't
Right.
really matter. The point is, there's this other thing going on, which is that other countries are not very happy about the United States. We think there's been
Right.
a big mistake made there and nobody's dealing with it, and that it's a dangerous big mistake and it's causing other people a lot of stress and anxiety and damage, and money. And so if somebody wants to work with an editor who's familiar with the American publishing scene, but they don't want to work with an American, which is, I'm sad to say, is not an uncommon attitude outside the States. Or just people are just kind of
Hmm.
like, no. Um, they have problems they need to deal with, and until they get their shit together, we'll just deal with other people. There's lots
Yeah.
of people in the world who do what I do. So that means that I have a bit of sort of an angle, I guess, of approach that I
Mhm.
could capitalize on. I don't know if I will because, it's kind of like a negative angle, but it's possible that it'll come in handy.
Yeah. So now, thinking about ultimate goals.
Yeah.
Are you planning like a in 1 year I want to be here, in 5 years I want to be here kind of thing, or?
Initially, I have sort of a 9-month plan, which is to parachute into the Commonwealth organizations. So I've joined one. My membership was approved. It takes a week.
Mhm.
Do a profile, use that mutual agreement to join another one. I may or may not go for the third one. Just they're not cheap to join and cash flow, and I'd have to have a plan. So I haven't, but at least the first two I have a plan for, and then really use courses as a way to have a platform for my courses because honestly, running a course off Teachable, you got to do so much marketing for people
Mhm.
to even see it, that it's very time consuming. If I can do it through an association who offers courses to people looking for courses, then that's a
Mhm.
much easier way to get found.
Right.
So that's the first step goal is to just use my 14 projects, of which 3 I'm making money off and 11 are dormant, repurpose them with my current branding, or whatever the association wants in their branding. So I have to research their stuff for what they'll take in a course, and then pitch them. And then
Mhm.
that'll take 6 9 months, and then in a year I'll turn around and say, well, how far did I actually get? What were my sticking points, my obstacles? Um,
Mhm.
what's my income source looking like now? How do I? Because the long term goal is to disappear from not from the world. That'll happen whether I want it or not. To disappear from being in my office 5 to 6
Yes.
days a week for several hours a day, and
Yeah.
the way I think around that, for me, given my area of expertise, is to use the stuff I learned by doing to create learn by doing courses so that I can
Right.
show other people how to do what I do to the standard that I approve of, because it's an
Yeah.
unregulated field, editing. There's a lot of
Yes.
shitty providers out there, you can get scammed or just amateurs,
Mhm.
and I don't there's nothing wrong with novices, but they need to take courses. So that's the market.
Right.
And
Right.
then what I'd like to do is be out of the office. I'd like to be in the office 3 days a week, probably starting in 2028, and then maybe 1 day a week, and then just coast on my laurels.
Yep. Just coast.
Spend more time writing. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm getting old, right? So it's like, no, I don't wanna spend my entire life running this business.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's my goal too, and is to reduce, no longer feel completely tied to my work,
Yeah,
right? And to be able to only work 4 days a week,
yeah,
be able to concentrate more on things that I want to do as opposed to things that I have to do.
yeah.
And just free up time, which I think is a very normal, there's not bucking trend here. And
No.
what you're offering is one insight and example for how people can think about that.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how useful it is because every situation's specific, but if you have a skill that you've learned through practicing your art or your creative adjacent work,
Mhm.
and you can turn that skill into a product versus a service that you provide. Basically, every hour you work, you get paid, or every project you work, you get paid. Turn it into something evergreen that you can continue to offer and
Mhm.
make a bunch of them. It's only guaranteed that there's going to be money in it if you find places to put it out through, and you
Yeah.
know how to market it so that people will find it valuable.
Yep.
But that stuff can be learned. It's not impossible to learn that. I've
Yeah. And I like your approach is, why do I need to create an audience when there's plenty of places that already have an audience and what I'm offering is a good fit?
Yeah, exactly.
Uh,
That to me
yeah.
is the first step. If it doesn't work out, then I'll go the other way, but I think
Mhm.
it'll work out. I'm quite I don't know. I just feel like it's going to work out.
I do too.
Yeah.
Absolutely, 100%.
Why wouldn't it?
Yeah. You know, I think this is good. I like it. I feel like anytime we talk about diversifying what we do and how we get new work and how we perceive our work, is always beneficial to me. And so, thank you.
Oh, thank you. And I just want to say, I used to think the editing part was the be all end all. So this is 15, 16 years into this business. I love the editing. I really do. I love, especially, well, all phases actually. And I understand how much effort and time that one-on-one service takes. And so, you might
Mhm.
depend on what phase you're in your creative stuff. uh, that this might seem like a weird plan if you're just starting out and you're trying to get gallery shows and all this
Yeah.
stuff, but
Yeah.
eventually.
Yeah. Yeah. International diversification. I'm just trying to get like a client.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
but that's the joy of the mid-level.
right. Thanks so much for listening to Gifted Underachievers, the podcast for mid-level creatives with delusional ambitions. We're in 75 countries. We're available on Apple, Spotify, and wherever else you want to get your podcasts. And we'd love it if you'd come and visit us. We have a website at giftedunderachievers.substack.com, where you can see the segments we have on all kinds of topics, pitch yourself as an interviewee, or just browse around for more information. Until we meet again, we'll hope you have a great creative week.